If you missed out on PlayStation 5 pre-orders and were hopeful that your local retailer would have some for sale on launch day, I'm afraid I have some very bad news for you with this. And the Nintendo Switch has surpassed yet another milestone in terms of sales, and we have a whole bunch of new data to go over. What's going on, guys? I'm RGT85. If this is your first time on the channel, welcome. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. But without any further ado, let's talk about what's going on in the world of video games. So in less than 1 week, the PlayStation 5 will finally be releasing, at least in most regions, such as North America. Other countries will have to wait until November 19th. But for a lot of us, this is a big day because we are looking forward to the PlayStation 5. Now, of course, since the system has been unveiled, the pre-order situation was, well, absolutely terrible. They did a big presentation on it, said that, oh yeah, you'd have plenty of time to get your pre-orders in, and then pre-orders just started going up on websites like GameStop and Best Buy and Walmart, and it was a free-for-all situation with this. Unfortunately, because of the lack of communication with Sony on these PlayStation 5 pre-orders, a lot of people were not able to simply pre-order this system so that they could ensure that they get it on launch day, which obviously was very frustrating. I was lucky and got mine through Walmart's website, but I know a lot of people personally that were unable to get their hands on a PlayStation 5 pre-order, leading to some very frustrating situations. But you would think that with the system launching on November 12th, at least in North America, that you could possibly go to your local retailer, walk in there, and get your hands on one of these systems, just like every other system launch, right? Well, Sony announced today that that's actually not going to be the case at all, and put out a little press release on their blog stating the following. Hi all, sounding like Scott the Woz there. The launch of the PlayStation 5 console on November 12th or November 19th, depending on your region, is almost upon us. In the interest of keeping our gamers, retailers, and staff safe amidst COVID-19, today we are confirming that all day of launch sales will be conducted through the online stores of our retail partners. No units will be available in-store for purchase on launch day, November 12th or 19th, depending on your region. Please don't plan on camping out or lining up at your local retailer on launch day in hopes of finding a PlayStation 5 console for purchase. Be safe, stay home, and place your order online. Gamers who have pre-ordered for pickup at their local retailer should still be able to go to their designated appointment time under the retailer's safety protocols. Please confirm the details with your local retailer. A special thank you to our entire community for your continued support this year. Here's to the next generation of gaming. So in theory, I understand this sentiment. Obviously, you want to stay safe in these times. Nobody wants to get sick in any way, shape, or form. COVID-19 is something that a lot of people are having to deal with, so I get that portion of the segment. But to me, it's just a weird thing because obviously, people are going to want to stay safe. There are measures that you can take in order to stay safe. When people were camping out to try to get a PlayStation 5 pre-order at their local retailer, that wasn't a big deal. That wasn't a cause for concern. I remember seeing many live streams on YouTube where people were camping out at their local GameStop in order to try and get a pre-order for the PlayStation 5. Why wasn't it an issue of safety then? Why would you allow people to camp out at their local GameStop to get a PlayStation 5 pre-order in store? I really feel like that, yes, this is sort of the reason why they're doing this, but more so is that we have heard so many rumors that Sony was having to cut production of the PlayStation 5 due to these COVID situations, so maybe there's just not enough supply going around. A lot of retailers have actually canceled pre-orders because of supply constraints. Some pre-orders were of course delayed as well, so I don't know, it's just a very weird thing. And another thing is, it kind of makes Microsoft look bad, because what if somebody wants to camp out for a Microsoft system, for an Xbox Series S or an Xbox Series X? Is now Microsoft the boogeyman because they're allowing people to do this? Like, I don't know, it's a domino effect with things like this. When you come out and say that this is the reason because you want to keep people safe, instead of saying, well, you know, maybe there's just not a supply of things, it sort of makes other companies look bad if they don't fall in line with things like this. It's obviously a very sensitive situation, a very sensitive topic, but I do think it's very strange that within less than 1 week, Sony is now deciding that, hey, we're not going to do any consoles in stores simply because we want to keep people safe, but when it came to the pre-orders in store, it wasn't a big deal and people were allowed to camp out. But do you think I'm going too far down a rabbit hole here and getting into conspiracy theory territory, or do you think that there's actually some merit to this? At the end of the day, it doesn't really matter, because if you did not manage to get a PlayStation 5 during the pre-order fiasco, it looks like you're not getting one on launch day, which is definitely going to be disappointing for a lot of people. And finally, early this morning, Nintendo had their financial briefing in which they go over the latest Nintendo Switch software and hardware sales, and there's a lot of cool stuff to go over with this information. Of course, it's always interesting to see how the Nintendo Switch is doing. It's obviously doing much better than the Wii U ever did, and now we have some new sales data up until September 30th to sort of showcase what is going on with this. We got hardware and software sales, but first I want to talk about the hardware side of things because the Nintendo Switch has now hit yet another milestone. It has officially passed the Famicom/NES in terms of system sales. Life to date on the Nintendo Switch has the system hitting 68.3 million systems worldwide. Now, 57.93 million of them are for the standard Nintendo Switch, and 10.36 million of them are for the Nintendo Switch Lite. Now, the Famicom/NES sold roughly 62 million systems worldwide in its life cycle, meaning that, of course, the Switch has now surpassed this with 68.3 million. It is interesting to note that Nintendo actually did not end the NES distribution cycle in North America and Europe until 1995, meaning that the system was actually available in the market for roughly 10 years, whereas the Nintendo Switch is just nearing its 4th year on the market. So, obviously, the Nintendo Switch is definitely an anomaly. It's doing very, very well. In less than 4 years, it's managed to sell 68.3 million systems, and I think the sky is the limit with this system. If you're looking at the console side of things, obviously the next big thing would be the Nintendo Wii. Can it get those Wii numbers selling over 100 million systems? I definitely think it will, to be perfectly honest with you. At first, it was kind of sketchy. I was like, are they going to be able to do this? But I really think they are going to be able to do this. Now, one thing I found very interesting within the software data for the Nintendo Switch was the digital sales of things. In the first quarter of 2020, 55.6% of sales were done digitally, but now it's gone down to 38.9% in the second quarter of 2020. So obviously that's because a lot of retailers are now able to be at least somewhat open and have safety protocols in stock. So I definitely thought that was very interesting information there, because obviously you hear that digital is the way of the future, and I think we all know it is, but I just don't think that the all digital future is quite at the point where it wants to be with a lot of these companies, because people still like physical games. Now, when it comes to game sales, of course, there's just some absolutely crazy stuff going on here. So Mario Kart 8 Deluxe has sold 29 million copies worldwide on the Switch, which is just absolutely ridiculous. Animal Crossing, 26 million units. This game came out in March, so that is from March to September. This game managed to sell 26 million units. Absolutely insane. Super Smash Bros. Ultimate at 21 million units. Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild at 19.74 million units. Interestingly enough, Pokemon Sword and Shield, the game that, well, it didn't look all that great and people were upset about the Pokedex. Yeah, that ended up selling 19 million units cumulative between the two games, so obviously that was much ado about nothing. Super Mario Odyssey at 18.99 million units. Just some absolutely crazy numbers here. We actually got new numbers on recently released games. Super Mario 3D All-Stars has sold 5.2 million copies worldwide. Obviously, that was going to be a very successful game that a lot of people wanted to get their hands on. Paper Mario the Origami King has 2.82 million units sold worldwide. I think that's very solid for that game. Obviously, it was sort of, an unexpected game. It didn't really have a lot of hype going into it. Obviously, Nintendo just sort of dropped the announcement, and then we got the game pretty much a few weeks later. So I think that's very good sales data for that, and it's a really fun game. And Luigi's Mansion 3, obviously a game that I thought was the Nintendo Switch game of 2019, 7.8 million units worldwide. So Nintendo Switch games are selling, physical games are selling, digital games are selling, systems are selling, and it's definitely going to bode for a very interesting future. Now, speaking of the future, we do have their little launch schedule of primary Nintendo products per region, where they talk about games that are coming out and games that are coming up from both first party and third party publishers. And as usual, there's not much surprise here or anything like that. Metroid Prime 4 still a to be announced thing. Bayonetta 3 still to be a to be announced thing. Breath of the Wild 2 to be announced. So there's really no sort of surprises in here. Usually there's not many surprises in here. Looking at the third party stuff, we know about all of these third party games. So once again, no real surprises, just business as usual on this side of things. But I definitely think it's very interesting stuff here. I'm surprised that the Nintendo Switch has managed to outsell the NES in, you know, half of the time roughly that it's been on the market, less than half the time. The NES, like I said, was of course released in North America in 1985. The Famicom came out in 1983, so it definitely had a much longer life cycle than the Nintendo Switch has had thus far, yet the Switch has already surpassed it. I think 100 million units is a foregone conclusion at this point in time. Obviously, the Nintendo Switch is going to be a very hot selling item this holiday season with the Christmas season and Kwanzaa season and all these crazy celebrations, Hanukkah. You got all this stuff where people buy gifts for people. You're going to have people buying Nintendo Switch systems because of the fact that it's going to be hard to get a PlayStation 5 and an Xbox Series X or an Xbox Series S. Hell, we just talked about how hard it's going to be to get a PlayStation 5, so I feel like a lot of people are going to look at the Nintendo Switch as a very viable option to pick up this holiday season, either for themselves or their children, because it's going to be available. That's really what's going to come down to, the availability of these systems. Whichever system has more stock on the shelves, I think that's the system that's going to sell the best. Alright, so that is going to do it for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Be sure to let me know what you think of everything in the comments section down below. Are you a bit disappointed about the PlayStation 5 situation? Did you manage to get a pre-order online, or were you hoping to get one in store and now your hopes and dreams are shattered because who knows when they're going to be for sale in stores? And the Nintendo Switch surpassing the NES. Are you surprised by this? Are you surprised at the amount of time it took, or did you see this as a foregone conclusion? And as always, folks, thank you for checking out this video. If you are new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications. Check out other videos on the channel as well, and as always, I'll catch you guys on the next one. Later.